So, hello everybody. My name is Luca Pradovera. I work with Mojolingo, which is a company based in Atlanta. We specialize in consulting in voice over IP and messaging solutions, and we recently started working on chatbots. Two of our customers are large insurance companies, and our goal has been to not only focus on the result of bot interactions, but also on how to improve them constantly, and which framework was the correct one to use to build the solutions we're working on. So, as I said, I work for Mojo. I've been working with phones since I was 8 because my father is also a phone engineer. And that's what Mojolingo does. We do a little bit of everything. We're a small consulting company specializing in building things that other people won't build. So hit me up if you need opinions or on building anything, really. So everybody wants to talk to the machine, right? Everybody wants to get people out to the call centers. Everybody wants to get bots in the call centers and customer support. Everybody knows what the chatbot is, so this is a slide I included just for reference. They're usually text-based, but not necessarily. In fact, what we've been working on is using voice as an interface for chatbots, which provides a few challenges, but also some interesting features we can work with, which I will elaborate on later. So, some numbers. We've been running a lot of research as part of the work for the insurance companies. And what we see here is that 75% of call center operators will be replaced by bots in 9 years. Well, it was 10 years when they did the research, actually. And that's a Deloitte research. I have links to all of these papers if you need it. And the other important point we can gather is that, in general, WeChat, and I don't know how many people here have heard of WeChat. It is a weird platform. In fact, it's the leading platform in China, but nobody seems to have heard much of it outside of China. What they essentially do is they've been doing rudimentary sort of sales bots for a long time. And right now, 30% of e-commerce market in China goes through messaging instead of plain storefronts. That's because the millennials, which is a label I think has no meaning, but let's take it as face value. The millennials command a lot of buying power, and they're used to interacting with the world and with companies using messaging. I always joke that my sister-in-law, she's 18 years old, if she's sitting next to me and I need to ask her something, I need to send her a message on WhatsApp. Speaking to her won't work. Like, she will ignore me, she's got her phone in. I actually did that once. And the other data we can get from Facebook, which recently released 2 interesting insight reports, is that 22% of Facebook's users already interact with the bot on a weekly basis. The daily basis number is actually fairly low for now, just because the useful bots that are on Facebook, there's about 10 of them. All other bots are living in some sort of space where there's not much there aside from experimenting. I'd say including our first project, to be honest. So, where do we want to use chatbots? Customer service, of course. People asking about what's going on with their whatever, contract or service. Inbound call centers. This is the challenge we're personally trying to tackle. We're trying to move bots into the voice space for a customer that has 400 agents. We're trying to reduce that number to, I think, 10%, so 40 people. Then again, unions will probably try to, so if someone here from a call center union, don't chase me out of the building. We've been trying to find other jobs for those people. But anyways, what we're concerned for as an industry is there's e-commerce going on there. More and more examples. Any examples you've seen over the last day and a half really will add some kind of a commerce component to it. The easiest example to show is the usual Facebook bot where you say, hey bot, I'd like to buy shoes that are red. And the bot will show you 5 pairs of shoes that are red, and you can pick one. What's important, what we feel like is important when you put a chatbot in your operation is triaging, the concept of triaging. A bot cannot solve all problems your users will face, but a bot can be a very efficient way of doing triage, whether it's in the medical field, as we saw yesterday, or in other situations. You're basically removing people from the flow so they don't hit your live agents, reducing costs and getting the same service. Where same service is an important definition. You want to be sure there's quality there. So what do bots do best? Some bots, so you have many bots in your operation, they can all access the same knowledge base, so they can share knowledge accrued through business operation and also through multiple interactions. They are context aware without much effort. A bot usually knows the page you're coming from and can easily access, in case of, say, e-commerce, can easily access the history. So you've been through this, and this article, so maybe I want to show you something that's similar. Unless you tell me you didn't like what you saw, in which case I can easily show you something that's different. They're very cost effective. A bot once built, not for $800 though, a bot once built will be usable by all of your users, and it provides consistent interactions, which improves the ability to collect analytics, feedback results into the system, and get better results in the next interaction. So we're all happy, right? Chatbots will fix everything. We're done for. They will probably start programming eventually, and we're done. Well, not if robots are good, right? So we don't want to end up with this, I suppose, unless you're some kind of evil genius, in which case I want to work for you. So, handling, what do bots don't do? They don't handle unexpected situations. If you ask bots that's selling shoes what the weather is in Atlanta, it's probably gonna just say, sorry, I don't understand your answer, unless you throw it for a loop. Maybe it's got an entity definition that responds to Atlanta, and you're ending up on a completely different tangent. Endless looping, it's very easy to end up with a bot that keeps going back to the same spot. It's what we do with IVRs, but we do that on purpose, so people hang up and go away. But on bots, you don't want to do that. They can be bad at understanding language, and when I say that, I don't mean ASR or text recognition is bad. I really mean that if people don't speak, if the sentences are broken, they're not native speakers, it can be very hard to work with a bot. But a bot doesn't know when to quit, which is the fulcrum of the next part of my presentation and also of the research work we're doing. A bot has to know when it doesn't have the ability to help a user. It has to figure out on its own when it's time to cut over. So, interaction design is very important, but you have to solve solvable problems. Don't put your mind into fixing everything at once. Don't think you can replace your website or an app with a bot right now. What you want to do is start with a vertical. Start with a very simple single situation. What you're doing here, for example, is our bot is asking a few questions to give the user a quote on car insurance, which is a complicated situation in Italy because they vary very widely geographically and also by age of the person requesting insurance and other factors. So that's all we're solving. That bot is not actually selling insurance to people. They're pre-screening them before sending them to the appropriate agent. So target vertical markets, very important. If you're building a bot, choose something you can manage completely and you have domain knowledge of. Use analytics, quantitative and predictive. Know things before they happen and use data on what has happened to improve your results. So, designing bot interactions. These are the guidelines we go through. These are all for a few studies. The average session time is just about 1 minute. The average number of messages sent in a session is 10 messages. And it's important to account for synonyms and common phrases. The most common words in any bot interaction on Facebook are variations of hi. So you have to account for them. Or someone saying something simple as hey will not work and it will look like it doesn't work. So these are simple things, but we'll hit all of them, and it's important for people to know when you're starting to build out things like that. So a little bit about 1 minute, 10 interactions. This is going to be an important metric in our next reasoning. We need real-time feedback. The first rule of robotics, according to Isaac Asimov, is do no harm to humans. So we're trying not to break people by making them go through hell. That's what IVRs are for again. The conversation flow gauging is very important. You have to know in real time what's happening during your conversation and feeding back into the loop to work through any kinks you might have in your process. So natural language processing is still an important tool. I will not build a bot just on Watson and maybe ASR if you're running through voice. I will build a bot that tries to react to what people are saying in various situations. What we're doing here is working on something called the satisfaction threshold method. So essentially, every time an interaction happens, we keep a level of satisfaction of the user between a certain range. And if it goes below a certain range, we just cut the conversation over. The bot will say, sorry, I can't help you. I will send you to an agent. That helps us and helps the industry because we don't create a generation of first adopters that don't like bots because they don't work. That is very, very important. So we're still testing various models. Of course, for example, I was going through the average time and number of messages. If an interaction is way past the average, like if you have 20 messages in a session, that's already an indication of something is going wrong, unless you have reset points in dialogue. What happens is that, for example, let me do the e-commerce example. If you're asking for red shoes, and you're still asking for red shoes after 10 interactions, something is going wrong. So that's the problem. If you're asking for red shoes, then for a green shirt, then for a white tie, it's all fine, because essentially those are not the same interaction. You're starting over every time. So that's the first metric we use, is number of messages on the same topic. Repeated requests are a very important red flag. Repeated requests are mostly the case where the bot is actually not understanding what's going on. So based on your entity analysis, if someone is requesting for the same thing 2 or 3 times, it's probably better to check. Tone analysis in voice is very important. When we're doing voice interaction, we've been doing sentiment analysis to tone of voice. You can tell if people are angry or relaxed or happy about their interaction. And it's also easy to do sentiment analysis in text through the Alchemy API. Never be afraid to quit your interaction. So, how do we build these things? We use the IBM Watson Conversation API for the most part. This is personally the one I prefer. There's others. Watson is very, very flexible. So the whole Watson ecosystem consists of about, I would say, there's probably 100 different APIs in there. Some of them are useful, some of them won't be. You want to explore the whole ecosystem. So how does the Conversation API work? It's a text-based chatbot tool. You can run it on Bluemix, their own cloud. Everybody and their sister runs a cloud now, so IBM has their own. Or you can just run it on your own app. The 3 key words are intents, entities, and dialogues, which we'll go through shortly later. You can do contextual communication, so it can maintain a state for the whole conversation, or you can do stateless requests. A stateless request will simply be fire a question at the bot and see what comes back. Depends on what you're doing. So what's an intent? An intent is a list of phrases a user can say. There's not enough resolution here to actually read what's going on there, but it's mostly synonyms. Watson will ask for examples to improve recognition. So in our case, we discussed earlier where we had the hi phrase, the easiest phrase you can have. You want to enter hi, hello, hi there, or howdy, and whatnot, maybe a few other languages and things like that, hola. And that's because, when Watson detects an intent, it will return the tag you associated it to. So for example, in our example we just run, we will have a tag that's called greeting. There will be all the different greetings, and your app will get back a post telling you, okay, the user said a greeting. What's an entity? Entities are a list of recognizable values used through, together with intents to provide analysis of the text. It's similar to a grammar if someone here is used to building IVRs. So, for example, you might have a phrase that says, I'd like to see X shoes. The X will be an entity. Then you do a list of entities, which is red, green, brown, yellow, sport. And then when someone says, I would like to see sport shoes, you will get back an intent of looking at shoes and an entity of sport. So you can run queries and whatnot. Dialogues tie everything together. Dialogues make intent and entities flow in each other based on usually questions. So you can have greeting, then a greeting will be followed by a question. Question can be, what can I do? In which case maybe you want a tree where you will be saying what you can do in the bot, or time? I'm done. And it's specified text for conversation. So here is where you put the phrases that people would see when using it. We also use Watson text-to-speech. It's text-to-speech and ASR, so really just what you... expect from it. The last important thing I will recommend looking into is the Alchemy API. We're using the Alchemy API to do the sentiment analysis, to do keyword extraction. So real time, the conversation is monitored for specific keywords that relay a sense of discomfort, of disappointment from the user. And the other thing we're doing on Alchemy, which is very important, but we just started, it's a project we started last week, so it will be a long time. Well, not a long time, but will be a while before I have anything to show, is we're using Alchemy, which extracts meaning and sentences to automatically create conversation trees, so entities, intents, and dialogues from existing knowledge bases. For companies that have large knowledge bases, like, for example, electronics repairs, there's a bunch of manuals, turn them into bots so you can ask how I can fix this without having to actually create the tree yourself. So thank you. This is second time at TED Summit. Always a pleasure to be here. And if you have any questions, I'll be here and I'll be around later. Thank you.
So we've got a couple of minutes for questions while I hook up for our next remote presenter. Any questions for Luca?
Yes?
Yeah, you mentioned at the beginning that that $400 or there's the $800 maximum, and the previous presenter said kind of struggling at being a little bit low because that can be anywhere from 15 minutes to a week of development time, depending on the team. For what you can see, how much time do you think it would take for somebody to do a vertical implementation?
So without going into money, which doesn't concern us, as far as time is concerned, it took us 2 weeks with 2 developers, let's say 1.5 developer full-time, to come up with something that's usable and is in internal beta right now. So I'd say you can do, if you know your market and you have access to someone that has domain knowledge, so the insurance person we're working with is very knowledgeable and very accessible, I'd say anywhere between 2 to 3 weeks for 2 developers. So 6 weeks FTE, but I will rather do it with 2 people. One doing more of the code side of thing and the other working on interaction, because you're really doing them side by side.
Probably some extra test time after.
Of course, yeah. Well, the test time depends on so many factors, it's difficult to gauge at this point.
Any other questions? So note that the Watson that they're using for speech recognition is not IBM Watson. Was AT&T Watson, and they sold it to, who did they sell it to?
We use it, actually.
Are you using IBM Watson?
I think they bought it from AT&T somehow, I'm not sure.
Okay.
It's all, what we're using for that project, it's all under the IBM umbrella.
Okay.
Still, yeah, there's a few Watsons around. Either lack of creativity or there's only one and people are buying it back and forth.
It seemed like for a while, if you were a very large company, you were required by law to have a project called Watson. And,
yeah, ended up being quite interesting.